You have been lied to about compound interest, not directly, not by anyone you could point to, but the math you have been shown does not match the math you have lived. Here is what nobody draws on the chart. In year one, if you save $500 a month at a 7% annual return, you contribute $6,000 of your own money and the market contributes $200. You did 97% of the work. Compound interest did 3%. That is not the chart you were shown. The chart starts later. The chart starts at the moment where the math finally works. Nobody draws you the brutal first decade where it doesn't. Charlie Munger gave that decade a name. The first 100,000 is a bitch. After that, you can ease off the gas. He was not being motivational. He was telling you what the chart left out. $100,000 doesn't make you rich. It makes the math start working for you instead of against you. And until you cross it, you don't save your way to wealth. You survive your way to it. What you are about to learn is exactly why this one specific dollar amount changes the math underneath your entire financial life. Why the first 100,000 feels like running on a treadmill that goes nowhere. Why the second 100,000 feels like running downhill in a tailwind, and why the financial system itself is built to reward you the moment you cross this threshold and quietly drain you while you are still under it. Think about how a rocket actually gets to space. The hard part is not the destination. The hard part is the first 10 minutes. The engine burns through more fuel in the first 10 minutes than it does in the next 10 hours combined. The atmosphere is thick. Gravity is at maximum. Every pound of fuel is fighting every pound of weight. But there is a number. Physicists call it escape velocity, about 25,000 miles per hour. Below that number, gravity wins, and the rocket falls back to Earth. Above it, gravity gives up, and the rocket coasts for the rest of the trip. $100,000 in invested assets is the financial version of escape velocity. It is not a savings goal. It is the point at which a different mechanism takes over. Below it, compound interest is theoretical. You read about it in books. You see it in spreadsheets. You believe in it the way you believe in physics class, but it never feels like it is working on your particular life, because in absolute dollar terms, it isn't. Above it, compound interest is mechanical. It is not a concept anymore. It is a thing that is happening to your money while you sleep. The number on your account starts moving on its own, slowly at first, then quietly, then constantly. Here's what most people miss. There are 3 reasons the first 100,000 is brutal, and none of them are about how much you earn. The first reason is psychological. You live inside a culture engineered for instant gratification. Dinner arrives in 20 minutes. The movie streams in 3 seconds. The phone arrives tomorrow, and you can pay for it over the next 30 months. But wealth does not work like that. Wealth works on a delayed timeline that your brain was not built to respect. You are essentially writing checks to a version of yourself you have never met. The version of you who benefits from your discipline at 28 lives 20 years away, in a future you cannot see yet. Most people quit on that version of themselves because the silence between you and them is too long. The second reason is the one you already heard in the hook: contribution dominance. When you have almost nothing invested, your contributions completely drown out your returns. You feel like a person with a savings account that happens to be in stocks. Not an investor, a saver in disguise. This phase is not a side effect. It is the phase. And it lasts about 7 years on a standard income. If you have ever opened your brokerage app expecting movement and seen a number that looked like rounding, that was not your fault. That was the math. The math just hadn't shown up yet. Stay with me, because the third reason is the one almost nobody talks about, and it is the one that should make you a little angry. The financial system is built around the threshold. Below $100,000, you get the worst version of every financial product: higher fees, worse interest rates on your savings, maintenance charges on your checking account, lower limits on what you can invest in. Brokerages will technically let you in, but they will not call you, write you, or assign you anyone. You are a number processed by an algorithm charged the maximum allowable. Above $100,000, the system flips. Fees get waived. Interest rates on cash improve. Mortgage rates drop a quarter point. Wealth advisors call you back. Private products you didn't know existed start being mentioned in your inbox. The same institutions that ignored you for a decade suddenly remember your name. You can call this unfair. The institutions will tell you it is a function of operational cost, which is partly true, but the lived reality is simpler. The system charges the most to the people who can afford it the least and rewards the people who already have enough to be rewarded. This is the part that makes the threshold feel almost moral. You are not just trying to save $100,000. You are trying to escape a bracket of financial life where every single product you touch is engineered to cost you a little more than it should. And that bracket is not a small group. It is the majority of working Americans. $100,000 is the line where the system stops draining you and starts paying you. You don't save your way to that line. You survive your way to it. Once you cross the threshold, the math you have been doing alone starts being done by something larger than you. Here is what that actually looks like. At a 7% annual return, $100,000 generates roughly $7,000 per year in passive returns, about $580 per month. For a lot of Americans, $580 is a car payment, 2/3 of an electric bill, half a grocery budget. Money you used to have to earn now arrives whether or not you show up. But that is not the part that matters. The part that matters is what happens to that $7,000 next year. It gets reinvested, so you are earning 7% on $107,000, then on $114,000, then on $122,000. The snowball has started rolling, you stopped pushing it, it started pulling itself. Here is the math that makes this real. If you save $10,000 per year at a 7% annual return, the first $100,000 takes just under 8 years. During that stretch, you contribute about $78,000 of your own money. Compound interest contributes about $22,000. You are doing roughly 4/5 of the work. The second $100,000 takes just over 5 years. You contribute around $51,000. Compound interest contributes around $49,000. The work has shifted to almost 50-50. The third $100,000 takes a little under 4 years. By the time it lands, the market is doing more work than you are. You did not get a raise. You did not change jobs. The math just hit a different gear. And then it gets quietly unrecognizable. By the time you reach $500,000, the market is generating about 3 times your annual contribution. By the time you reach $1 million, it is generating 7 times. You are showing up every month and adding the same $10,000 you always did. The market is showing up alongside you on autopilot, doing the work of 7 of you while you sleep, while you commute, while you eat lunch. This is the actual reason wealthy people seem to accelerate as they get older. It is not because they got smarter. It is because they crossed the threshold that compounded math the way altitude compounds gravity. Escape velocity isn't about how hard you push the rocket. It is about how much mass is already moving. And there is a survivorship lie buried inside the compound interest story. People look at someone with $2 million and assume they earned $2 million. They didn't. They contributed maybe $700,000 or $800,000 over a lifetime of saving. The rest came from staying in the seat, from not flinching during the crashes, from letting the rocket pass through the loudest minute and into the silent stretch where physics does the work. The boring saver with $100,000 has more momentum than the high earner with nothing. Salary is fuel. $100,000 invested is altitude. Altitude beats fuel once you have enough of it. But the threshold is not just mathematical, it is psychological, and the psychological part is where most of the real change happens. There is a Federal Reserve survey of consumer finances from 2022 that puts the median household net worth in America at $192,700. Median means the middle. Half of American households have more, half have less. For Americans under 35, the median net worth is closer to $39,000. The Fidelity Investments report from late 2025 puts the average 401k balance across all age groups at about $146,000. The median is much lower than that because a small number of very large accounts pull the average up. What these numbers tell you is uncomfortable. Most Americans never cross the $100,000 threshold in liquid invested assets at any point in their working lives. Some get close. Some get there and pull it out for emergencies. Most live an entire career below escape velocity. And here is what crossing it actually changes about your daily life. There is a Tuesday morning, somewhere after the threshold, when the market drops 6% in a single session. You open the app out of habit. You see your account is down $40,000 in 8 hours. $40,000 is real money. It is 4 years of your own contributions, gone in one trading day. You close the app, you go to work. 2 months later, the number is back. 9 months later, it is higher than it was before. Nobody noticed but you. You did not call anyone. You did not sell anything. The 100,000 teaches you something nobody can teach you with a book. It teaches you that money survives time. And once you believe that, the way you walk through a workplace changes. The job that was slowly killing you stops feeling permanent. The first offer that pays the rent stops feeling like the only offer. You stop seeing every dollar as something to spend and start seeing dollars as something that can multiply. You develop what psychologists call an abundance mindset, and it is not a personality trait. It is a math fact. You have already proven to yourself that you can delay gratification for nearly a decade. That mental muscle is the thing the market actually pays for. The 100,000 is not the freedom. The 100,000 is the door to the room where freedom becomes possible. Picture Peter. Peter is 28. He drives a 2014 Civic with a check engine light he has been ignoring for 3 months because the diagnostic alone costs $90 and he is saving for something he can't quite explain. He makes $65,000 a year before tax. He has $15,000 in a brokerage account he stopped checking weekly because it stopped feeling productive. Every Sunday morning, Peter pours coffee and opens the app. He sees the same number he saw last Sunday, plus or minus a few $100s. He does the math in his head. Last month, he put in $600. The market gave him $82. That is less than a tank of gas. He closes the app and tells himself he is being patient. He is not sure if he believes it. There are 2 versions of Peter who walk out of that Sunday morning. Version A of Peter pours the same coffee at 33. He opens the same app. He sees the same $82 return on a slightly larger balance. He closes the app and orders brunch on it instead. $12.99 for the omelet, $3 for the coffee, $2 for the tip. That $18 is the first dollar of contribution money he has ever redirected. It will not be the last. The new car arrives a few months later, then the bigger apartment, then the dinners he used to skip. By the time he is 55, his investments are worth roughly what he stopped contributing to them. The check engine light has been replaced by car payments that never end. The Sunday morning ritual got traded for something that felt more like progress at the time. Version B of Peter keeps going. He adds $10,000 a year. He hits $100,000 at 35. When he opens the app on the Sunday morning that month, he sees something he has never seen before. The balance is up almost $1,000 from last week. He didn't contribute anything new. He looks again. The number is real. For the first time in his life, the market gave him more than he gave the market. He closes the app slowly. There is no celebration. There is just the quiet recognition that the engine has finally started doing some of the work. He hits $200,000 at 40, $500,000 at 48. By 55, with the same income and roughly the same lifestyle, he crosses the $1 million mark. The market did about 2/3 of that million. Peter did the other third. He is still driving a Civic, although a newer one now, although honestly the old one would have been fine. What separates them is smaller than it looks. Version A of Peter and version B of Peter were the same human being on the same Sunday morning. Same coffee, same balance, same $82 return. The only thing that separated them across an entire working lifetime was whether they trusted the chart they couldn't see yet. One of them stayed seated when the engine was loudest. The other one got off the rocket in the first 10 minutes. The math doesn't lie. The math just doesn't show up until you do. $100,000 is not a number. It is a threshold. It is the line where the math you have been doing alone starts being done by something larger than you. The first 99,000 is the engine. The next 99,000 is the trajectory. Most Americans never cross it, not because they cannot, but because the engine sounds loudest right before the noise gets quiet. They get off the rocket in the first 10 minutes. They go back to street level and tell themselves the rocket was broken. They call the people who stayed in their seats lucky. The math doesn't care. The math just waits. Charlie Munger said it for decades in interviews and shareholder meetings and the books written about him. The first 100,000 is a bitch. He never softened the wording because softening it would have hidden the truth that the wealthy already know. You don't save your way to $100,000. You survive your way to it. And once you do, you find out that physics was on your side the whole time. You just had to stay seated long enough to feel it. Thank you for watching.